Now, of course, you could just make your own chorizo. I mean, it's just a simple blend of ground pork with some dried ground chili, herbs, spices, garlic, a little splash of vinegar. But if you live anywhere near a Mexican grocery store that has its butchers, I'm here at the beautiful Casa del Pueblo in the Pilsen section of Chicago. Well, if that's the case for you, then your treasure hunt for good chorizo is going to be pretty easy and super delicious. I mean, just look what they've got here. This is Chorizo de Puerco Casero, or homemade Mexican chorizo. And you can see that it's flavored with the red chili, but so is the stuff that's next to it. This is sliced pork for pastor tacos, a little onion thrown in, some pork loin also with that same red chili marinade, some chicken legs. I mean, this is really classic Mexican flavor. Dried chili with garlic, herbs, spices, and a little bit of vinegar. Señor, por favor, 2 libras de chorizo. Okay, so you've got your beautiful, fresh chorizo. Now what? Well, you treat it practically like you would any fresh sausage, which means that you can put it on the grill, you can cook it in a skillet. I love to scramble it into eggs or add it to hash browns, but probably the simplest thing that you can do with it is to make a taco filling out of it. So I'm gonna put a skillet here over medium and then cut this chorizo out of its casing. Just split it down like that so that you can get the meat out of that. This is a natural chorizo sausage. Open it up like that, and then I'm going to put it directly into that skillet. And it should start to render its fat really quickly. Now, I like to add something kind of crunchy to my chorizo filling for tacos. So I'm going to take a red onion. You can already hear that chorizo start to sizzle in the skillet there. And sort of thickly slice it and add that to the skillet. And after about 10 minutes or so, that chorizo will be done. The onion will be soft and sweet and still a little bit crunchy. So it's browning up nicely there. Package of tortillas from my local favorite tortilleria. I'm just going to turn the burner on here and give it a little toast. This is the best way for quick, impromptu tacos at my house. And then I'm going to give it a little bit of those crunchy onions and chorizo sausage. Now that's fantastic. You know, chorizo, it just brings so much. I mean, there's the tanginess from the vinegar, all the spices, the red chili that's in there. I mean, whatever you add it to, well, it's just gonna bring all of this complexity and this beauty to it. Which sort of got me thinking that this mixture could actually be turned into, you're not going to believe this, but into a salad dressing. Because, well, think about that warm spinach salad with the bacon in it and the caramelized onions. Well, bacon replaced by chorizo, it's not too far-fetched at all. Let me show you how simple that can happen. Now, you got to put together the vinegar and oil part of the dressing. So I'm going to put in a couple of tablespoons of a very, very light vinegar. Something like rice wine vinegar works really good with this. About 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And because the spinach salads, the warm spinach salads, always have a sweet element in their dressing. I'm going to put 2 teaspoons of sugar in there. It'll only need about a half a teaspoon of salt because there's already salt in that chorizo. And that's it. We're just going to let this simmer away. I'll stir it all together while we get the spinach together. Okay, so I got some baby spinach from the grocery store that I'm going to put into a wooden bowl here. Just dump all of that in there. And I thought the coolest thing would be to put some jicama in here. Let me see if I can get the right knife for it. Jicama, you know that really crunchy vegetable that you can find in almost any produce counter these days? Well, the one thing, if you haven't worked with it before, that you need to know is that it has and you can't peel it with a vegetable peeler. You want to go at least, I would say, about 1/8 of an inch down. You see how far down I'm going in that? Because there's this fibrous exterior. So cut all the way around it like that. I'm going to go kind of deep into it. Sometimes you'll find these indentions, and you want to go down into those and cut that. Any dark spots, get those out of there as well. And then just in half. See, it's crunchy like an apple is crunchy. And then I'm going to slice it and then cut those slices into small dice. Okay, now all of the jicama in on top of the spinach. This is that baby spinach, that salad spinach. And then I'm going to take our warm dressing. Doesn't that just look delicious? We'll toss it all together, slightly wilting the spinach, but not too much. It just softens it a little bit, which I find incredibly delicious. That's just what I wanted it to be. I mean, that warm dressing brings out the flavor of the spinach, and well, the chorizo gives that magical bacon effect. Kind of a modern Mexican dish that, well, it brings a whole new meaning to the phrase taco salad. You know, today everything and everyone is going green. Green buildings, green cars, green tea. Well, the greening of chorizo started about 5 decades ago in Mexico. Por favor, ¿puede mostrar una pieza del chorizo verde más o menos 1 kilo? It all started in Mexico's chorizo capital. It's a town that's called high in the mountains south of Mexico City. And what basically happened mid-20th was that those famous chorizo makers decided to take a different approach to making the chorizo. In fact, what they did was to take all of the red stuff, the stuff that makes the really traditional red, things like dried red chilies, and replace them with something green, like green chilies, fresh chilies. And all the dried spices they replaced with fresh herbs. And so what started a Toluca specialty, well, turned into a sort of greening of Mexico. And now you can find green all through central Mexico and even as far south as Oaxaca. ¿Me ver, por favor? Gracias. And here in Mexico City, you could stumble across green chorizo practically anywhere, from the markets to local taqueria. Por favor, señor, uno de chorizo verde con guacamole y queso. Claro que sí. What they've got here is some green chorizo that's cooked with just a little bit of red chorizo and some potatoes, and off with some guacamole and beautiful creamy fresh cheese. love this place. It's called El Güero. Well, I guess its official name is Tacos Olan. It's in the Condesa section of Mexico City. And don't you just love the variety that you see behind? Every earthenware dish is filled with a different kind of traditional Mexican flavor. You just go order what appeals to you, and they serve you little tacos of it. It's equivalent of a Spanish tapas bar. I'm gonna put a little bit of the green salsa here over my green chorizo taco. Give it a little taste. Well, I'm not sure quite how to describe the flavor of it to you, other than to say it's kind of grassy to it. It's fresh. I mean, fresher than what you would expect out of red chorizo. And, well, it's got that very satisfying pork going on, too. So if you're thinking about going green yourself, at least chorizo-wise, well, you're probably going to have to make the green chorizo yourself because it's really hard to find it for sale anywhere in the United States. But don't worry about that because it's really simple. I mean, if you could make meatloaf, you could make green chorizo. You start off by roasting a poblano chili here. When it's blackened and blistered all over, then let it cool until you can handle it. Rub off all of that blackened skin and tear it open. Scrape out the seeds and give it a quick rinse to get any stray skin that you missed earlier. Then roughly chop it all up. Okay, I'm going to scrape this poblano into the food processor. Chop up a serrano. This is going to give it a nice little bit of spiciness and an even more intense green chili flavor. The last little bit here is cilantro. The last of the green ingredients. I'm going to take a medium-sized bunch of cilantro, give it a rough chop, and add that to the food processor as well. Turn it on and make as smooth a puree as I can. So basically all you have to do is take that green mixture that we made there and add it to some ground pork. You don't want pork that's too lean for this because you are making sausage after all. So I'm going to scrape in our sort of slushy looking green mix of roasted poblano and cilantro and serrano chili. 2 teaspoons of salt to it, and mix it all together. And I'll tell you that the most effective way to do this is to mix it with your hands. Okay, so now you've got your green chorizo. What do you do? Well, one of the classic chorizo combinations is with melted cheese. Just think about queso fundido. I mean, you know it, you love it. And if you make it with green chorizo, well, you might just a little bit more. The first step in making a green chorizo queso fundido is to put a skillet on, put it over about medium heat. I'm going to drizzle in a little bit of oil to coat the bottom of the pan, and then spoon green chorizo. We need about a generous half cup or so. Now while that starts to cook, I'm going to slice up an onion to go with it. So I'll scoop all of that into the skillet. Stir it around as it begins to cook. The chorizo will render a little bit of its fat, and we'll cook it just like you would regular red chorizo and onions. About 10 minutes. Chorizo's done and the onions are still kind of crunchy. Now the other ingredients for this very special green queso fundido include, of course, cheese, some spinach, and some beer. I know what you're thinking, but I'm actually going to use that as one of the ingredients in the dish. spinach, well, I'm gonna need a big handful of that. And all I've got to do is roughly chop it and grate this jack cheese. Now I'm going to pour in about 3 tablespoons of beer and then scoop in all of that spinach. The beer will help to wilt the spinach nicely, keeping the green theme going. Now when most of the liquid has evaporated, just sprinkle the cheese evenly over the skillet and continue to stir it until all the cheese is melted. Don't let it go too long. Okay, scoop it into my queso fundido serving plate there. I've got some warm tortillas. This looks fabulous. You know, it's true. Chorizo's just magic, like bacon is. There's nothing it doesn't make better. Now, one of the hallmarks of high-end modern restaurants all over the world these days is taking a classic dish and sort of reinterpreting it with a whimsical wink. Same is true here in Mexico, and to prove that point, I've brought you to one of the coolest restaurants in Mexico City. It's out in the San Angel region, and the chef here, Daniel Ovadia, has taken something as plain and everyday as chorizo con huevos, chorizo and eggs, it's like the bacon and eggs of Mexico, and done a really modern riff on it. First, the chef spreads out some little tostaditas. Each one is a different color because they're flavored with different herbs and spices. Then on goes some chorizo foam. Now he makes that chorizo foam by cooking chorizo with milk and then blending it until it's completely smooth and putting it into a nitrogen-charged siphon. Then on top of that goes a quail egg yolk. I mean, first he's got to crack the quail egg and then separate the yolk from the white. And then they nestle in some little crispy pieces of chorizo, top it with some homemade puffed rice, little Colima sea salt, and then serve the whole thing with a cracker that's made with phyllo dough that's smeared with the little beans, and topped with a little guacamole, and sprinkled with cheese, and then baked until it's completely crisp. It's the flavor of chorizo and eggs, but with the delicacy of cold souffle. It's pretty cool how he's captured the essence of a breakfast dish, but in a whole new chorizo chic kind of way. at Topolo Bompo, our fine dining restaurant in Chicago, we've got our own little chorizo reinvention project going on. Now, we start with the chorizo spices, but instead of pork, we use seafood. And Brian Enyart, the chef de cuisine here at Topolo, developed this recipe, so I've asked him to step us through it. The first thing he does is to scrape into a food processor sea scallops and some black cod. Then he cracks in an egg, scoops up all of those chorizo spices and adds those, secures the top, and then turns on the machine to make an absolutely smooth mixture. Now, after scraping that mixture into a bowl, he folds in some diced sea scallops. It's just super cool the way that they look like little chunks of fat in mortadella. Then he presses out that mixture into a log shape. It's easiest to do that from a pastry bag, and then rolls that all up in plastic wrap, squeezes in the ends and ties them securely. Then the log gets poached. It'll take about 15 minutes or so for it to get done. Once the chorizo is completely cooked, we unwrap it and then brown it in a skillet in one portion sizes. That makes it even more savory. Then cut it and serve it with a little swoosh of carrot puree and another one of roasted tomatillo salsa, some warm potatoes, crispy onions, a little watercress salad. Whether you buy it or make it, chorizo is just one of the most amazingly versatile cornerstones of Mexican cooking. Now, our little chorizo treasure hunt has taken us from a taco filling to a salad dressing, from red to green, from queso fundido to fine dining. So I'm just saying, give chorizo a chance. I mean, its flavor will turn practically anything into something that's, well, impossible to resist.